In the moonlit embrace of rural Victoria, the decadent town of Buckley beats with a hidden heartbeat, the sanctuary of free-willed kindred. An anarch haven since the gold rush, Buckley's shadows hold secrets, its nights untamed. Yet the looming spectre of the Camarilla now threatens the delicate balance. As long-forgotten feuds simmer, a group of neonates bound by loyalty and survival find themselves at the epicenter of a power struggle. The Camarilla's tendrils tighten, and Buckley teeters on the brink of open war. Welcome to the dance of shadows in Buckley, where the anarch flame flickers against the encroaching night, a tale of defiance, politics, and the seductive allure of eternal power. This is Creatures Such As We, a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition actual play podcast, presented by DM Fiat. I am your storyteller, Dale, or DG, and tonight I shall be your guide through this hidden and treacherous world of darkness. It's been a month or two, vamps, since we all heard the sad story of Mickey Mayhew and perhaps even contributed a little to the final result. And until then, life's been, or unlife rather, has been relatively normal in Buckley. At least as normal as it could be when the city's divided in two, when the Cam push at the Anarch's boundaries and tiny little border skirmishes seem to break out every other night, and almost every night now, almost every night now, you're brought tidings of some Anarch or another, new blood, old blood, doesn't really matter, running into trouble, getting themselves beaten up, something vicious, getting threatened, getting blackmailed, having their assets tinkered and tampered with by the Cam aggressors. But so far, that promise of all-out war that was planted in Buckley 30 years ago hasn't yet come to pass. And perhaps it's partly because of your efforts with Mickey Mayhew, exposing his duplicitousness before it could get back to the Cam, that bought the Anarchs of Buckley just a little bit more time.
You're welcome.
As Wisteria would say. But of course, in Buckley, as sleepy a town it is, at least in the mortal world, things are always happening, conspiracies are always in play, and creatures such as we are always looking for opportunities to steal a little bit more status, a little bit more power, and advance the intrigues of themselves and their bloodlines. So let's find out what the coterie have been up to in the months since the last story. There's been more than enough time for you each to have conducted something of your personal pursuits. Well, let's find out what they are. Starting off in no particular order, let's go with our resident schemer and planner, Wisteria.
So she's got a television wall, because of course she does. She stands there and looks at it in like her platform shoes that make her half an inch taller, in like natty black suit trousers, not a skirt. She's moved away from that, and she just looks at it and flips from monitor to monitor, and she is tracking. She's tracking things you track on Wall Street. Wealth has never been of particular interest to her, but she got good at it so she can ignore it. But now she's not ignoring it. Now she's looking for leviathans. Leviathans called Ventru. And other movers and shakers who realize that if you're immortal, you don't have many expenses and that money builds up. She's doing a sonar check. If vampires were submarines, she'd be pinging outward to see what else was out there, while trying to avoid giving away her position. She's seeing where the movers and shakers are and what noise they make so that when she goes after them, or they come after her, she knows who's doing it and how to fuck them up.
Very good idea, because the financial institutions of Buckley were pretty much the first Anarch assets to disappear when the Cam came to town. Aside from the Baron's personal business, there were a couple little sidelines and revenue streams that the Anarchs had going, and when the Ventru arrived, they were swiftly taken. Go ahead and make me, Wisteria, an intelligence plus finance roll, and we'll see what pings.
Okay. Yeah, the reason she wasn't much impacted with this, that her stuff was spread out, and honestly, most of it's stolen. The only stuff they took was the stuff she could afford to use and lose and swiftly replaced.
Or perhaps the truth that she would never accept is that her business is simply too small time for the Ventru to care about.
And that's okay too. Now, the other truth of the matter is that she might be setting up a long-term play against one Nathaniel Black, because you don't need a pig like this all at once. 4 successes.
4 successes. So, Wisteria puts her feelers out. She makes a couple little investments here and there, spreads some money around where it counts, and sees what shakes up. How many dots in resources do you have, Wisteria?
4.
4.
She loaded.
I would say 4 dots and 4 successes means you get 4 pieces of information. The first is, just as Wisteria suspected, the Ventru have dug in tight, but there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of Ventru. Rather, many of the city's financial institutions, the banks, the utilities, the department stores, they're under Kindred control, but not under Ventru control, at least not apparently at a surface level. Your second piece of information, Wisteria, reveals that after you prod around, call in some contacts, and ask around, you learn that most of these Kindred who are ostensibly in control of these situations are merely offering their names and faces, and that the real cards are in the hand of, as you suspected, Nathaniel Black, current seneschal for Queen Victoria of the Camarilla. Your third piece of information is that Nathaniel, or at least the prince, through him, seems to be investing quite heavily in 2 different sectors. One, urban renewal and construction, turning many of Buckley's languishing factories and warehouses into converted upmarket residences and condos, department stores and trendy cafes. Several of them... Gentrification. Several of them already apparently snapped up by some of the city's elite mortals, of course, but maybe in league with the Ventru. And your final piece of information reveals that a significant amount of money, ostensibly controlled by the Ventru, is being funneled into something called the Church of the Guiding Light. A new church, or at least an old church made new. Several of the city's historical locations, most of them coincidentally in anarch-dominated parts of the city, have been rejuvenated, restaffed, and rebuilt, preaching a brand new doctrine of tolerance and equality.
And it occurs to Wisteria that this isn't the Ventru's usual MO.
Most certainly
that
not.
She never did figure out what got her sire on board with Black's plan.
Indeed. The Ventru are not one to bolster organized religion. That's more of a La Sombra thing, and even then, it's a rather bizarre thing for the Cam to do in general. Something's definitely off there. But she's
Sombra,
unable
yes,
to
but also Sedite.
Indeed.
Sorry, ministry. That's what we are now, aren't we?
A fuzzy picture begins to form in her mind, and we move on to the next person. Gil, what have you been up to over the last couple months?
I reckon Gil's started to move in on old Mickey Mayhew's territory. There's no one at the top now, and, well, he's an enterprising young Bruja. I think he's trying to make movements into the transport industry. Could be useful for himself as a guy who likes to get things around, get things moving. So yeah, I think he starts kind of moving in on that territory.
Well, with your contacts in criminal, I would say that fairly easy for you to muscle in and either run Mickey's side gig as it was, or change it. Perhaps you don't smuggle kindred so much, perhaps you smuggle kindred and other commodities. Most of the drug trafficking in Buckley seems to be tied down by Baron Wild and his closest confidants. But so long as you only traffic below a certain amount, a little bit here and there, you should be able to get by unnoticed. So I'll offer you a choice here, Gil. Either you can roll to see how effectively you step into the void that Mickey left behind, or you may make use of your side hustler perk this session and automatically get in. Up to you.
Ooh, you drive a hard bargain. I think I want to roll. I think rolling is going to give it an interesting outcome.
Yeah, well, this doesn't seem like the type of thing that Gil would use his innocent, friendly persona for, so go ahead and make me a charisma plus intimidation roll. And add an extra dice for your ingenue. Sure, you're not trying to appear trustworthy here, but Gil's got that thing where no one expects him to fly off the handle, and when he does, it's so much more effective just because of how unexpected it is.
Can I at all rouse for this?
You sure can. If you get hungry, you will be starting this story with 1 extra point of hunger.
Definitely starting with an extra point of hunger. So, an extra dice? Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see how we do.
That would be 3 successes. Because I want to push a bit here, I'm going to reroll my failures.
Go ahead.
And that makes it a magnificent 6 successes, critical.
So, Gil, you move fast. You know how it works in the underworld. Vacant positions of power don't remain so for very long. very quickly someone will step in and take that spot if you don't take it, and so you're on it, snatching the opportunity as soon as you can. You use your contacts to get in touch with some of Mickey's people, introduce yourself to them. You simply tell them that Mickey's retired, and they get the implication. They're not paid enough to ask questions, and nor would they want to, faced with someone like Gil. And it only takes a few weeks for you to start pulling your weight around and getting this little side gig working for you. And that's when you discover that Mickey Mayhew was keeping things from everyone in Buckley. He wasn't really smuggling kindred, not really. That was a service he offered, but very few of the defectors from Cam territory that made contact with him ever made it into the Anarch side of Buckley. Rather, you discover that Mickey Mayhew was this city's arm of the circulatory system, a secretive network that traffics in blood. Mortal blood of various resonances, and even, for those particularly picky elders, vampire blood coerced, stolen. It would, it would, you feel, perhaps be a bit too disruptive to overhaul the business thoroughly right now, but I will ask you the question, would you like to keep working for the circulatory system, or would you like to eventually gear Mayhew's infrastructure towards some other function?
I get the feeling that changing it up might upset a few people locally, so I think keeping it as it is for now, I think it's a good idea, and you never know, might be a useful thing for Gil later on if he wants to change up his feeding tactics. Instead of relying on the old alleyways, you know, there's potential there.
Not too different from what he used to do when he was alive. Back then it was weed and shrooms. Now it's a different but just as addictive commodity. And so I will give you, I'm going to post it up in Coterie Huddle, a lore sheet perk. Tap into the system. Once per story, you can request specific blood vessels from the circulatory system to convey certain abilities or to provide for a venture who finds their feeding preference neglected in the domain. And an extra part of it, once per story, you may add an extra dice to any pools required to organize transportation of any commodity.
That's very nice.
Next, we'll move on to our resident creepy crawly, the Antmaster, Robert.
Robert's spent his time somewhat off of Wisteria's suggestion, but also just out of his own general curiosity and need to gather information, looking into the Father Simon.
Father Simon Estler, or as he introduced himself to Barry, Mr. Simon Burke. Clearly, he had things to hide, and after the whole Mickey Mayhew affair revealed that he in fact wasn't entirely as he appeared and had his fingers in some pies he didn't want to tell anybody about, Robert was the one who felt primed to do the digging. After all, nobody ever sees him coming, not with the specific abilities he possesses. So, Robert, will you be going about this the traditional way? Pulling some favours with the other Nosferatu, sneaking around, bugging places, hiding obfuscated? Or is this a job for the Hive?
Please don't say it's a job for the Hive.
I think given what we currently know about him, I think it's a job for the Hive.
Mm.
Because he knows asking around and that might. He knows they have ways of like sensing things, so the more people he talks to probably gives him more opportunity to pick up that something's going down.
Yeah, bugging the place literally. So let's all just imagine for a moment Robert, the Nosferatu, skin as grey as stone, twisted ears and jaws of a gargoyle, making his way through the myriad of cramped, damp tunnels underneath Prospector Peak Amusement Park, and as he descends deeper, the walls begin to move. They begin to come alive. Millions, billions of legs attached to even more crawling ants. Tiny black sugar ants. Huge red bull ant soldiers, all of them one hive, and there, in an abandoned mine shaft, at the very nexus of it all, lies the Queen. Big, bulbous, immobile. Her putrid, bloated form taking up the entire girth of the mine shaft, endlessly and non-stop producing young, screaming larvae, hatching eggs, and always, always commanding the attention of the hive. And she seems to bristle with recognition and affection as Robert draws near, her antennas questing, her long, stubby legs beckoning him. An old friend. Robert, go ahead and make me a charisma plus animal ken roll for me.
Oh, it's really cool, but it also sucks.
Let's go marching one by one. Hurrah, hurrah.
Let's go for it. I'm gonna boost charisma just cause.
Definitely.
Failure, but oh well.
Starting at hunger 2 then.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna start willpower down. Reroll 3 of those.
The hive apparently have not been kept well fed, it seems.
Yeah, that's better. It comes to 5 successes.
5 successes. As you give the orders, if anyone were to hear you, they'd hear nothing but a soft clicking, insectoid chirping, and then the living walls part, scurrying into the night. You send them to various locations. The apartment block where you met Simon, the church where you know him to frequent his time, several local anarch haunts in the city, and you wait. And when the ants return to you, they bring you a most juicy morsel, Robert. Their tiny voices imparting to you their account of Father Simon Estler meeting in his church with one Alexander Pierce. They tell you of Pierce stepping through the back door of the church, dismissively brushing the priest out of the way, wrenching his hatchet from over his shoulder and brandishing it angrily. Where is my blood? Where is it? He hisses, and the priest cowers on the floor. I swear that the Bruja is moving in. The Bruja. Gil Burke, yes, Gil Burke is moving in, and things will be just as they... We had an arrangement, you and I, with Mayhew, didn't we? Says Alexander. And now there are others who are unaware of such arrangements, who I must negotiate with again. I am most displeased. And with that, Alexander turns and steps away before he exits into the night. He swings his giant hatchet, thwack, cleaving the crucifix on the wall in twain before he leaves. And then, last but certainly not least, let's find out what Barry's been up to. Speaking of Alexander Pierce.
Oi.
And Simon Esler, of course.
Yeah, speaking of, I think it'll start in the car ride back from the encounter with all the gangrel. And Simon's in the boot.
You're making your way along those dark night roads. Everything's silent. The only sounds you can hear, the wheels on the asphalt, and occasionally a thump, 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 thump from behind the back seat as Simon desperately kicks at the door. The door that, if this were any other car, his supernatural vigor would probably allow him to break through, but not Barry's car. Not Barry's haven, equipped with everything he needs to conduct his work.
I'm gonna drive to a nice, secluded spot where we can have a chat uninterrupted.
The car glides into the parking spot at a scenic overlook. The only other shapes visible in the pale moonlight, a barbecue, and a wooden table and chairs. Nobody's here. Nobody's ever here. You kill the engine, make your way to the boot, and pop it open, and as you lift it, the priest kicks out. His sharp boot nearly colliding with you until you say no. Step forwards, hold out your hand, grab it, and wrench it back down. The priest, the pathetic thing, looks up at you, his face imperious, yet cautious, wondering what's to happen to him next. He smiles. If you wanted to kill me, or stake me and hide me somewhere, you'd have done it by now. So, that means you have business to transact. And you know what the Lord says. He helps those who help themselves.
Before he finishes his priestly shit, I'm just gonna grab him by the throat and I'm gonna lift him up into the air.
He gasps. He lets out a little scream as you hoist him up, using your potence to grasp him in one hand, holding him up above you. He looks down at you now, his eyes wide with surprise. Perhaps I shall save the preaching for a more open-minded soul. He chokes.
Yeah, I think that's a wise idea. You must consider yourself pretty lucky now, don't you?
Worms. This gangrel would have torn me to shreds. You and your friends saved me. I suppose I am lucky. But you didn't do it out of altruism, did you? There must be something you want.
No, I've got something much worse in mind than you getting ripped apart by a gangrel, or you getting staked and left out to the sun. And then I'm gonna take his head, and I'm going to, slam him into the car window. Not enough to smash it, but so that he can see his reflection, and so that he can see me with my unerring pursuit. So I'm looking away from him physically, but he can see, another version of me staring directly at him in the reflection.
You feel him shudder. So that's how you... It dawns on him at last, when I was obfuscated, and that's how you saw me.
Simon, every time you see yourself in your reflection, I am there. I'll know what you're doing. I'll know where you are. So this is how this is all going to play out. Everything that you hear, everything that you say, all will come back to me. No bullshit, no preaching. It's all mine. You, Simon, are mine. Because I know where you are. There is nowhere in Buckley I will not find you. And I will not do what I should have done. And let you go to the wolves.
That won't be necessary, he says through gritted teeth. There is already a wolf on my trail. Perhaps the two of you would like to work together then, to squash the poor priest under your thumb. Get him to arrange deals and transactions, act as your go-between for the circulatory system. Work with him to undermine Mickey Mayhew, as you've already done.
Simon, I don't deal in deals, and I don't deal in politics. I deal in information, and I deal in getting shit done. The only reason that you're alive right now is because you have something I want, and you're going to give it to me whenever I want you to. None of this bullshit, none of this trying to wrap me around or trying to get me into some sort of shitty little situation, no. You don't fuck with Barry Marwood. Are we clear?
Swallows. You feel his whole body tremble in your fingers. And then he nods. Your sire, he says. I assume that's who you're talking about? Such potent blood running through your veins, yes. Yes. To shut down my attempts at domination like that, there is only one progeny you could be. And I can tell you how to find them where they are.
I'm listening.
It will take some time, he winces. I have to ask around, I have to pull some favors, I must make contact with certain people. The person I am referring to is now working for the Camarilla. It will be dangerous for me, but I suspect not as dangerous as you would be if I dared to cross you.
Then we know the deal.
He nods. He whimpers as he peers down at the still open trunk, and he just whimpers, "May I go down now?"
He said he wanted to go down. I'm going to yeah, I'll bring him down. And by bring him down, I'm just going to grab my head in the front of his, grab my hand on the front of his face, and then slam him, the back of his head into the ground, and then just sort of crouch over him and say,
Whack. Go ahead.
one more thing. Sarah can be yours. But if you put her in any unnecessary danger, you know what's going to happen. And then I'm going to stand up and get back in the car and just turn around and say, you don't need to contact me. I'll find you.
As you make your way back to the car, turning your back on him, you hear him mumbling, wincing a heap on the ground behind you. Yes, I'll start immediately. I'll do my best, and Sarah will be most useful. Yes, someone to
The
ask
door's already
around
slammed, and I've already put the engine on, and I'm gone.
Vroom! The car screams off, leaving the priest squirming in the dirt. And that's our downtime. Settled. You've made some inroads, kindred. Let us hope all of your various schemes bear fruit eventually. And now, to the story proper. Everyone, as this is the start of a new story, you begin with full health and full willpower. Now let's see about your hunger, shall we? As the sun sets over Buckley and the long shadow of night sets in, as your gelid blood begins to pump through your languid veins, I'd like everybody to go ahead and make a rouse check for me. If you fail, you'll be starting at hunger 2, or if you already have a point of hunger, hunger 3. If not, you'll be starting at hunger 1. Or hunger 2 if you already have it. And Britt, our new player, this will be for you as well, because you're stepping into the story.
Because I still had a hunger from last time, will I also be encountering that?
No. You're resetting yours to 1.
Okay.
Been 30 years. 1 hunger.
Wisteria is fine.
Wisteria is fine.
That would make Gillett 2 for today.
So 1 for our new, as yet unintroduced coterie member. And Robert, how about you?
Success on that rouse, so still just at 2.
Lovely. We begin this night with a view of Wisteria's haven. You described a little bit of it before, Wisteria, but perhaps describe where you get ready for a night on the town.
It's very impersonal for a haven. There's a store below, and she owns the building above, which is converted apartments. But it's mostly empty. It's like what you'd see in a TV sitcom stage. And she is walking over to the closet, pulling out something casual. No jacket. Just a pair of slacks and a nice button-down shirt. Then she pauses, walks over to the makeup mirror, slides the ballistic vest on, then puts the shirt over it. Starts touching up her face to age it. Powders a little gray into her hair. Sighs, then slides in the padding that makes her look like she's got a few more pounds, and a middle-aged version of herself looks back at her. There's gotta be a better long-term solution. That said, she goes and grabs her bag of tricks that looks like a purse. Her phone. And checks her messages before she heads out.
And as she moves as she scrolls down the phone, she's surprised to see a message on the screen, a number that she hasn't seen in years. She peers down at the screen and sees the name Dom blinking up at her. And it simply says, "Call me now."
Well, she walks over to the wardrobe, undoes the false bottom, digs out the first of many burner phones for this week, and gives Dom a call.
Glenda Wagner shuffles into the room. Here you go, ma'am, she says as she hands you one of the burner phones and then stands at attention ready to take it away when you're done. And
Of
you
course, I'd have
die.
her doing that. That makes sense. Probably on a silver tray.
Yep. This is, 3 phones on the tray. You just pick the one you're going to use tonight, dial the number, and Dom answers almost immediately. Wisteria, he says. Haven't heard anything from you in yonks, jeez. Like, I don't know, like 20 fucking years, eh?
Things have been a bit busy.
Look, I didn't
What
even
can
know
I
you
say?
didn't even know you were still in town, to be honest. Heard you was doing something over in Europe, he says. And
Yeah, that didn't work out.
I was just about to wash me hands of you entirely, delete you out of me contacts and everything, and then what do you know? Your thing pops up, not the painting, the other thing.
Oh. After all this time, he's gotten careless. Silly old man, he must be by now.
And yeah, well, that's what I thought. I thought, it's been 30 odd years and all, innit? And you said he'd get, whoever he is would get careless eventually, and these things would turn up again, and
Well, tickle my ears with good news, old boy, and I will upgrade the initial bounty to $2023. Conversion rate's a bit more in your favor, hmm?
And that I will most certainly accept, Dom says. So, in that case, I should tell you whose name's been dragged up out of the ether, eh? Don't mean
You
much to me. Don't mean much to me, but, you was operating in some odd circles back then. Could tell you he ain't part of my world, our world. So maybe he's one of your lot. The name Mr. O mean anything to you?
Oh my goodness, he's still around. Yes, he was an associate of an associate who turned rogue, as it were, got coerced into a different organization. Please give me all the details. The skinny, as the Gen Zers are calling it these days.
Sending it your way, ma'am, he says, and please do keep in touch. My businesses have diversified a lot over the last few decades. We don't have to worry
yes, I
so
know.
much about those big Melbourne big shots anymore.
Well, of
And
course
then-
you don't, she says, and she knows why that is.
And then there's a click, and the line goes dead. A torrent of messages immediately arrive on your main phone. The burner phone goes dead. Here, you say, as you hand it to Glenda. She nods as she takes it, and she says, I'll dispose of it immediately, ma'am. All set for the
Please do.
night out?
I believe I am, thank you, Glenda. You can head home and have yourself one on me. Wisteria slides her a hundo.
She nods gratefully as she takes it, turns to leave, and then you swipe your finger across your phone and open the messages. Feeling your face twist into a smile as Baron Wild's jovial, handsome face appears in your mind's eye, congratulating you. He's going to love what you have for him.
Over the years, he's learned that he doesn't necessarily need to use presence on her. Partly because she's still going from that first hit.
He certainly
Wisteria
is.
doesn't normally feel things for people. Although but that was the closest she's got.
And as the Baron's face flashes in your mind's eye, we fade out. We focus on the Baron's face as he smiles and winks and beckons, and someone else opens her eyes. We zoom in, we fade in on a new character. A slender, pale-skinned woman. in the manager's office of a nightclub. The office cast in an unsettling purple light. The walls emblazoned with ancient tapestries, Gothic gargoyles, and a not disconcerting amount of lace.
We do love our lace over here, now don't we?
We sure do. Introducing Evelina Ashford, our new character. Evelina, you're seated at the desk in your office, getting ready to attend a summons from the Baron, and we catch you just as you're finishing your nightly routine. Please, go ahead, describe what your character looks like and tell us a little bit about what she's been doing tonight.
So, Evelina is a lovely young lady who loves her gothic black dresses, as they are all the rage in her nightclub. She has been spending the night hitting on absolutely everyone who is coming into the bar, and just spending a lot of comfortable time with all of her staff.
They are indeed her staff. That's very firm in this Zamesi's mind. This nightclub, the auditorium, is her domain, and all who exist within its walls, whether people who work here, people who party, or people who are just passing the time, are her people.
If anyone walks in, they are now mine, at least until they leave. If they leave.
Just as well. There's a knock on the door as you finish putting the last touches on your ensemble for tonight. Your usual long black Victorian British, very gothic dress. It's 2022 now. People know all about Wednesday Addams. She's all over everyone's social media, played by Jenna Ortega. And if anyone were to see you dressed like this, they'd say you're a dead ringer for her. Although your skin is perhaps a bit more pale and sickly. You look up as the door to your office opens, and for a brief moment you hear the pipe organ emanating from the dance floor outside. The office is flooded with yet more deep purple light, and your bartender, a short, stockily built, balding man who, under your orders, has been forced to wear a black oiled toupee and a Victorian-style tailcoat and top hat, shuffles into the room. "Ma'am," he says, nodding, bowing in front of you, and holding out his wrist so that you may take what is yours.
I will gladly accept that, but you need to give me a little bit of warning next time. Lunala over here doesn't like the loud noise. That's why she spends most of her time in the office.
Indeed. You gesture up towards the rafters where your ghoul, Lunala the bat, unusually large for a bat of this breed, a normal Australian fruit bat, sits, eyes gleaming bright yellow, nervously fidgeting as the pipe organ reaches a refrain outside. I'm terribly sorry, ma'am," says the bartender, as you grab his wrist and make a nick with your fang, taking just a single drop of blood, just enough to let it be known in his head who he serves always. And then you release his wrist. It falls limply to his side. He fumbles around in his tailcoat and produces a smartphone. He says, "Hey, I'm told it's very urgent, ma'am. Again, I do apologize. I would at least knock. I would at least arrange a meeting beforehand, but you know what the Baron's like, he says, smiling, winking, as he hands you the phone, and you see the Baron's face gleaming up at you. His long, handsome hair, his beaming, fatherly smile, his immaculate white suit, and the gleaming gold ankh that he always wears around his neck.
Now, what
Ms.
is a fine man like this calling me at this hour?
Ms. Ashford, he says, beaming. Hope I haven't caught you on a busy night.
Oh, it depends on what you would consider as being busy.
I hear the auditorium's been picking up in business lately. It turns out after you've locked everyone indoors for 2 years, they want nothing more than to party upon being let out. And, well, as eccentric as your taste in fashion is, as sometimes off-putting as downright disconcerting as that little nightclub of yours can be, it turns out that the fun-starved mortals simply do not care. So, I imagine you're busier than you are usually, and so it was with great trepidation that I picked up the phone, for I did not want to disturb you, such a hard worker and all. But I have something you'd perhaps be very interested in, and that is that Mr. O has resurfaced.
Oh, you mean the guy that was sending my sire messages?
One and the same, says the Baron, still smiling. I thought you'd like to know, and there are some others here who've had some run-ins with him too. You'll get along with them just fine.
Others? You know I'm not usually one to work with other people, other than the people who already work for me.
I know it too well, Miss Ashford, says the Baron, still smiling. But you'll find these others good at what they do, and you have a common interest. And, well, I wouldn't say it to them, he winks, but they could use your help. They're good at getting things done in their own right, but when it comes to a worm such as Mr. O, they might need a little bit more.
She rolls her eyes. Oh, I guess. Let me just go get my waitstaff to I'll just have to let them know that I'll be heading out for a little while.
I do apologize, says the prince, raising a hand. I'm holding court down at the New Order. Not that I intend to appear as if I'm throwing my authority around, but if you could be there within half an hour, coinciding with the arrival of the others, I would be most happy. I can't wait to see you, Miss Ashford, dear, he winks once more, beaming. Well then, I'll see you very soon, he waves, and then he's gone. So, you'll be out for the night then, ma'am, says the bartender, shrinking away.
Seems like that is the case today.
I'll hold down the fort, and I will, of course, ensure that a little parting gift is left behind by each of the customers on their way out for you.
I'll brush my hand down his face. You're such a good boy. You know exactly what I need. And I get ready to leave.
He nods and purrs, shivers at your touch. And then, with a whirl of your dress, you're gone, stepping out of the office and
I
into
do
the
take
night.
the bat with me, by the way. I do bring the
bat.
Yes.
You motion with your hand. Lunala lets out a shriek and flies down from the rafters, perching on her usual spot at your right shoulder. And then you're gone. And we open into the first proper scene of this story. with the coterie all in attendance at the new order. The new order is a rather nondescript pub in downtown Buckley, a couple blocks away from the Rack. Usually, when the Baron has business, you'd be meeting him at the Gold Rush Casino. That is indeed where rants are held, but these days, with the Camarilla encroaching ever closer on Anarch domains, the Baron's taken to hanging out at the New Order. It's become his new nightly haunt, and the place where every Anarch knows they can usually find him. And of course, I'll be posting a link to Owlbear Rodeo, just in case anyone needs to see the map. The New Order is a weird blend of rustic country pub and hipster chic. Deer heads and old faded photos of local sports teams mount a wall above the jukebox, which sits not far from a selection of well-worn sofas and low tables decorated with tabloid magazine clippings. The clientele tonight is a mixed bag, catering to young professionals, university students, rough-and-tumble men in their 40s, and, of course, more than a few vampires. Behind the bar, Sebastian Wilde, the Baron, holds court with his patrons. His handsome jawline is dotted with light stubble, and he wears a winning smile that never seems to vanish, even as he talks in low and serious tones with those gathered around him. Anita, the equally good-looking woman who works with him, and indeed it's unclear to you whether she's mortal or ghoul, does most of the actual pouring, while the Baron does the schmoozing. As he beckons for you all to approach, in the background, one of the patrons slides up to the jukebox, hits a button, and cold chisel fills the bar. A handful of hip-looking youngsters groan, others laugh and sing along, ironically. Unbidden, your minds drift back 30 years, to the rant at the Gold Rush Casino. On that night, nearly every Anarch in the city was in attendance, waiting to see how Baron Wilde would handle the upcoming crisis. That memory is a far cry from what you see tonight. This is the Baron on a normal night, not presiding over a rant, but just shooting the shit with whatever Anarchs have showed up to pass the time, and those with whom he has business to transact. Most of the bar's patrons tonight appear to be mortals, totally unaware that the beaming bartender in whose presence they feel so warm and welcome is in fact a monster of the night. If you were members of the Camarilla, you might describe this place with the word Elysium. And so, as you step towards the bar where the Baron beams, you take in the sight of Evelina Ashford, a vampire you've all seen several times before. You're all Anarchs after all, but have never met, have never had the pleasure of learning her name. And as Evelina, you see the rest of the coterie approach. How do you greet them?
I'm just gonna walk straight up and go, "Hi, I guess you guys are the ones we'll be working with today."
Oh, will we? That's news to me. Wisteria. And you are... a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Same to you.
Wisteria? Go ahead.
Is the bat always with you?
Always. It's okay. She doesn't bite. Often.
I'm not worried about that, but thank you.
It's clear to both of you, Wisteria and Evelina, that you are essentially polar opposites. You each have a flair for sophistication, for dressing yourselves up for, making sure you're only ever seen at your best, but where Wisteria prefers modern designer clothes, Evelina dresses like she fell out of an Addams Family movie. And then...
Before we move on, may I do something very quickly?
Go ahead.
I'm going to try to sense her sin.
Sense the sin.
I'm going to be working with her. I want to know what she just got going.
Go ahead, make a rouse.
I will go ahead and rouse. I don't need to rouse her, but I will rouse to increase the wits.
And what does she have to roll?
That would be composure plus intelligence.
So, Evelina, as Wisteria shakes your hand, she stares deep into your eyes, obviously contemplating something, and I'd like you to go ahead and roll. What was it again?
Composure plus intelligence.
Composure plus intelligence, please, for me, Evelina.
No
You don't
problem.
You don't have to roll too far.
2
I
successes.
didn't do well.
2 successes.
2 successes. Meet it, so you beat it. You stare into her eyes, Wisteria, and for a brief second, a monster stares back. A monster that, although at first appearance appears to be unsettling and almost certainly a monster that you would never dream of messing with, there's a warmth behind those eyes, and I will say that in this moment, Wisteria and Evelina, you each detect that the other still possesses a fair amount of humanity. There's warmth there, willingness to work without the beast, to not revel in the monstrous.
Well then, at least someone here is a little bit more human.
Well, you know what they say, give it time or money.
Time indeed.
Evelina turns her gaze to the others that remain. Barry, I should say. You're meeting with the prince. Are you wearing anything different than you usually do? Is there any sort of impression that you're trying to make, especially after being told that you'll be working with someone new tonight?
No, not particularly. Probably just like pat off some dust or blood on my shirt. That's probably about it.
Yeah. So you peer over at Barry, Evelina, and you see him resembling pretty much your archetypical noir film detective. Faded police uniform under his thick trench coat. There's dust and scuff marks and what appears to be dried blood stains on his sleeves and his collar. Altogether, he looks quite wild, positively unhinged behind his eyes, but he also carries himself with a certain air, an air that says in no uncertain terms, do not fuck with me.
She's gonna like move towards Wisteria and be like, does he always dress like that?
Bit better tonight.
And then there's Gil standing beside him. Gil, how did you rock up to a meeting with the Baron?
I think Gil would go for, at least an attempt at looking half decent. Like he'll wear, the good jeans, and probably like a long sleeve shirt that he's rolled up. It's not like a nice business shirt, but he's looking all right. He's looking presentable, not fantastic, but presentable.
A bogan trying to do business casual.
Yeah.
And as he smiles at you, Evelina, his eyes sparkle with the innocent, with a childlike innocence that completely throws you off for a fraction of a second. You've never seen a vampire that, upon first glance, gives you this impression. He seems like a regular bloke, the kind of bloke you'd call up when you need a lift to a concert or a footy game, the type of bloke you'd bring home to have a quiet night in with some beers and roll a couple of joints.
Well then, aren't you a little bit of a catch?
Like,
And I mean that literally.
right in his collar. Well, might be. You never know.
That's one way of describing him.
And then there's Robert. Robert, you're a Nosferatu. Getting presentable is not really something you're physically capable of doing, but knowing that you're in the New Order and that most of the patrons tonight appear to be mortals, have you made any attempt to hide your terrifying face?
Yeah, he always makes it. If he knows he's going to be around mortals, he makes an attempt to hide, to at least obfuscate his appearance somewhat, to keep up the masquerade. So he tries to dress well, but it's probably just him dressing well is probably still just jeans and a semi-decent shirt sort of thing.
Yep, jeans and a semi-decent shirt with a very thick hoodie obscuring most of it. Go on.
No, but he's wearing using the timing, wearing one of the disposable medical face masks sort of thing to help cover up his face.
Yeah, one of those people who's still wearing masks, and quite a few people are. He definitely doesn't look out of place there. At first, you think, Evelina, that he's just a down on his luck vampire who isn't exactly aware of how to conduct himself before the Baron, but then you see the shape of his pointed ears underneath his hood. And you realize that the face mask he's wearing is mostly to disguise the fact that he is a Nosferatu, that he doesn't look human at all. Robert, as you step towards the newbie, do you hold out your hand?
Oh yeah, it's we are Robert. Pleasure to meet you. And holds out a hand.
She'll take his hand and give it a little bit of a kiss and be like, "Nice to meet you too, sir."
You get some ants on your face.
Yeah, as you as you kneel down to kiss his hand, his long, skeletal, bony hand, 3 or 4 ants seem to scurry along the back of his knuckles, and you quickly withdraw with a shudder.
I do not
Oh, you did not.
I am not scared, little creature.
Perhaps it's a credit. Yeah, who are they?
There's kind of a Wisteria's lips kind of twist as you draw back with ants on your face.
I just pick them up and give them back.
Place them back on Robert's hand, and they scurry up his sleeve. Who are your friends, Robert?
I'm trying to think what would you refer to them as? Because there's no way he names them. Too many of them.
Each of those ants has a name, but only he knows, and only he has.
Ant 2, Ant 3.
Yeah.
Numbers 600 through 399. No, 3099.
Perhaps he simply says, "Friends? We are all friends."
Friends.
Interesting. You have some interesting friends there. This is my friend, gesturing over the shoulder.
She gestures at the bat, and even now you're aware of a couple of mortals off in the distant corners of the bar, leaning over each other's shoulders, surreptitiously trying to spy the bat on this very odd-looking, oddly dressed woman's shoulder. But every time you turn to face them, Evelina, they move away, giggling, burying themselves among their friends once again. You're quite used to it by now.
She just rolls her eyes and goes, oh, typical.
Welcome, welcome, says Baron Wild.
Fascinated by your emotional support, Chiroptera.
Welcome, welcome, says Baron Wild, holding his arms aloft. Please, please, sit down at the bar. I'll be with you in just a moment. He meets the eyes of Anita, raises an eyebrow and nods, and she gets to work pouring drinks for you, pouring deeply red glasses of wine and sliding them across the bar. At first you think they're blood, but as you heft them up and take a sniff, you realise they're just very deeply crimson glasses of vintage wine. The Baron winks. Enjoy, he says, as he turns and steps through a door behind the bar where you see a small group of people who are very obviously vampires waiting to talk to him. Please, make yourselves at home, he calls out as he steps over the threshold.
Can Barry do our heightened senses for hearing and see if he can hear any conversations going on behind?
You sure can. Go ahead and make me a wits plus awareness and add your auspex dots if you're using your heightened senses.
Wits plus awareness?
Wits plus awareness plus auspex.
That's a lot of dice. Five successes.
5 successes. Nice. You lean forwards, feeling the tip of your ear prick as you try to turn that cacophonous din of mumbling voices beyond the door into legible information. Anita finishes pouring the glasses of wine and slides one down onto the counter in front of each of you. She smiles and stands back, folding her arms expectantly, nodding at the mortals happily drinking at the tables over your shoulders.
Time to use that old blush of life, looks like.
Anyone who'd like to take a drink should of course rouse their blood to do a blush of life.
I'm having a good blood night. I don't get hungry.
I've already had enough drinks today, thank you.
Which is unfortunate, because the eyes of the mortals in this establishment seem to be firmly on you, and you can hear them whispering, that's a live bat!
They're firmly on her?
They're firmly on her.
Let's change that. Oh.
A live bat
Just to distract them until they get off the subject. Actually, Wisteria will justify it by turning and saying, "Round for the house." And toss more than enough money on the counter.
Any whispers about live bats quickly stop. Instead, people begin to whisper about the jacket that Wisteria's wearing. Look at that! Must have cost thousands. The way it fits it, the contours to her body, and then Anita strolls out into the bar, carrying a tray of drinks in one hand, the wine bottle in the other, and someone cheers. Wisteria raises her glass of wine and takes a sip. Barry, Gil, Robert, do any of you make the blush of life? Now that
Gil certainly does. He'll pick up the glass, kind of look at it, and then this isn't Gil's kind of drink, but he'll just shot it all straight down without a question of a doubt.
Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't get hungrier, as he very convincingly lifts the glass to his lips and sculls it in a single drink.
And he doesn't get any hungrier.
You should
Barry?
stop to taste it. This is the good stuff.
Barry, Robert? I assume Barry's carefully trying to listen in. He's perhaps not focused on his drink, but Robert. Blush of Life doesn't really make you look any more human. It does allow you, however, to knock back a drink. Sensing, however, that Wisteria and Gil have put on a good enough show for now, you're not entirely sure whether you want to risk getting hungrier just to keep up appearances. Entirely up to you.
Yeah, I was planning to, but if it's assuming like those two have sort of like gotten the eyes away from us, and then he won't.
So he just
Instead, he
pushes.
just sort of like, I don't know, like he keeps the drink, but instead of like drinking it like a person, he just sort of like dips a finger in, and then like every now and again, one of the ants will like come down, pick up a droplet, and just like takes it away. Like, really just letting the ants drink it, like seeing as he doesn't have to.
Ant's kind of like walking funny on the way back up here.
Yeah.
You see Anita's eyebrow shoot right up her forehead as she watches one ant, then a second ant, then a third, then a fourth, then a big black bull ant nearly an inch long make their way down your finger. Each of them hefts a drop of liquid out of the glass and carries it back up into the folds of your coat. She shudders.
Evelina's watching with curiosity.
Yeah, and so's the bat on your shoulder, perhaps hungrily eyeing that large bull ant.
She just
And
pats
then-
the bat.
Pats it under the neck, and it chitters, pulls its
Yeah.
wings around itself, and
It's
nods
gonna be
its
hell
head.
for Luna. Poor guy's a walking buffet and she can't have any.
So, Barry, you're leaning forward. You don't even really realize that you've been given a drink. You're paying as much attention to you as you can to that door behind the counter. You try to see if you can determine whether there's any identifying features of the shadow, of the obscured silhouettes there beyond the threshold. Squinting, you see that it's not a group of people at all, but rather that the Baron seems to currently be conversing with a woman. A woman who has bushy black hair flecked with dandruff. She seems to be wearing makeup, but it's applied in a way that suggests she hasn't done much makeup in her life. She wears a threadbare black cardigan and black slacks. She tugs on her sleeves in an almost nervous fashion, despite the very wide smile she wears as she talks to the Baron. And how many dots in intelligence do you have, Barry?
I have 3.
3. Plus you also have Auspex, so I would say you recognize this woman. She's not someone you've spoken to a lot. In fact, you've seen very little of her over the last few decades. She's wearing an entirely different outfit than she was back then at that night at the rant at the casino, but you recognize that this is Desiree, the Tremere. The Baron leans in. He growls, "Your little experiment can wait a couple more nights. This is more important. The cam could be about to make a move." She waves him off. "Oh, come on, Baron. You've got to scratch my back here. A boon for a boon." "Like hell I do," he says. "This is for the cause. Unless you want the cam running this place. Last I heard, the Chantry weren't too happy with you running off to Buckley, were they?" She shuffles nervously. "Look, I said I'd do it, but you promised you'd help with the other thing." "I just need a little procurement," she whines, pouting, clearly doing her best to endear herself to the Baron. "And you're the best with that stuff, since Mickey Mayhew stepped out of the limelight." The Baron shakes his head, then considers. He sighs. "Give me a sec." He makes to walk out from behind the bar and then motions over his shoulder to Desiree. Wait here. Seriously. He steps out again into the bar and eyes each of you waiting there, his beaming smile once again broad on his face. So, Mr. O, he says loudly, sticking his head out into the shit after hiding for 30-odd years.
It honestly smells a bit like bait to me, but it still needs investigation, no?
Of course, the cam could be finally, after all this time, making a move. They may have heard that Mayhew's out of the smuggling business and realised now's the time while we were all scrambling to fix that mess. He looks over at Gil and winks and says, "Course, they aren't really aware of the fact that it was not a mess for us to clean up at all."
Gil raises up an empty wine glass. Like, yeah, cheers.
So, Mr. O, says Baron Wild, once again letting the name rest on his lips. Massive coincidence that he should show himself after all these years, and most certainly smells like bait to me. He meets your eyes, Wisteria, but must be investigated nonetheless. Hence, I've called you all here. You've each had personal dealings with Mr. O and his co-conspirators, and so I figure you're probably the ones best placed to actually figure out what's going on, and indeed, if there is any sort of trap lying in wait, you're the ones most likely to get a whiff of it and avoid it. But who is Mr. O, he says. I'm sure you're all wondering. And why the fact that his name should appear now after all this time means so much to me. Mr. O's real name is Orson Forrest, he says. And he was my ghoul 30-odd years ago, as no doubt you probably suspected. But he defected to another master just before the orchestration of your embrace. And indeed, as you gleaned all those decades ago, it was he who assisted Kezia and the rest of your sires in orchestrating those events. Poor Orson was coaxed away from my service by your sire. He levels his eyes with you, Wisteria. A member, just as you and I, of the Church of Set, who was exiled from Buckley when I assumed the role of Snakehead. There were no longer any other members of Set's brood permitted to exist in this city, and all matters of the Setites were my business to conduct, and mine alone. As you can imagine, for one desperate to ingratiate themselves to the anarchs of Buckley, the position of Snakehead would be a very useful stepping stone. It was my suspicion at the time, and still is now, he says, raising a finger, that your sire, Wisteria, Thaddeus, is working with the Cam in order to eventually overthrow me and usurp the Snakehead position.
Oh, Thaddeus, is that his name?
Perhaps I had assumed that perhaps his name would have reached your ears, but after all this time, when he went to ground and hid himself so thoroughly, perhaps that was the wrong assumption to make. But you could surely understand now, with Mr. O, that is Orson Forrest, resurfacing, we now have a definitive link to your sire that we can perhaps make use of to find out where your sire is hiding and, of course, He extends his hands to each of the rest of the coterie in turn. Once we have found Wisteria's sire, then the rest of your sires will surely not be too much harder to find in their own right.
Evelina kind of just laughs and goes, well, we already know what happened to mine.
Of course, much as was the case with Kezia, Gil's sire, he motions at Gil, Evelina's sire was found and dispatched relatively quickly. She was not embraced as part of the same event that saw the rest of you dragged kicking and screaming into this world of darkness. She was embraced sometime later by someone desperately trying to court the attention of the Camarilla and failing, and thinking they'd leave a nasty mess behind. But she has already proven her allegiance to me and the Anarch cause by hunting down and dispatching her sire, and so you can see, perhaps she would be very useful in your pursuit of Mr. O and Thaddeus and the others.
Indeed.
At this, his eyes level on Barry's, and he says, and you, in particular, Detective Marwood. You will not turn down any lead that may reveal your sire.
So I am curious as to what condition you'd like him in after we're done with him.
He thinks thoughtfully. Well, that's getting a bit ahead of ourselves, isn't it? He smiles, flashing his pearly white teeth and fangs, throwing his hair back over his shoulders so that the light catches him in just the right way to accentuate his features. I would like everybody present to please go ahead and make for me a composure plus intelligence roll, please.
This isn't actually horrible. Let's see what... nah, 2 successes.
4
Composure
success,
plus
1 crit.
intelligence.
Yep, it's intelligence plus composure.
Hey, we like those words metacritical, right?
We do like the word metacritical.
You love to see it.
Do you want to suppress it, or do you want to roll with it?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like suppressing it is going to make it, not happen ever again. Yeah, no, I'm not going to suppress it. I like my willpower.
Robert? Evelina? Barry, how'd you do on your rolls?
Just 2 successes from Barry.
2 successes?
4 success, 1 of them being a crit.
Ooh, nice. And Robert?
Robert is also a 2.
Evelina, you've spent enough time around the Baron to know that when he wants to get people to do things for him, he's particularly good at making people feel like they can trust him, that they'd love to serve him, not because he's asking a favor, but because the Baron is such a good man that you would be a fool to not readily devote yourself to his cause. And so his presence doesn't work on you, Evelina, but it works on everyone else. His features suddenly appear angelic and soft, and everyone except Evelina and Gil, we'll get to Gil in a moment, gets the impression that your school children speaking to your favorite teacher, who's telling you that, of course, you want to do well, of course, you want to achieve. His smile passes over Gil as he tries to envelop Gil in this warm, welcoming aura that he casts. And that's when, Gil, perhaps due to the wine coursing in your veins, you hear the beast rattle its bars in the back of your mind. Speak honestly, or not at all, you hear it whisper. And you clench your fist without even really meaning to, Gil. You clench your fist so hard that, crash, the wine glass crumples to dust under your fingers, jerking everyone else out of the reverie that the Baron was pulling them into. Unfortunately now, the smile on his face is replaced with a frown, a look of annoyance. He bites his bottom lip. And he whispers, "For now, focus on finding Mr. O, and I will have orders to impart when it is time. We know that he's out there, but we don't know where, and that's where." He motions behind his shoulder as Desiree steps out. "Where Desiree will come in." Yes, says Desiree, frowning, looking at the crumpled shards of glass there on the counter. Gil's clenched fist still grasping the stem of the wine glass, the top and bottom snapped off it. And then, Gil, which of the Brujah clan Banes do you have?
Gil has violence.
Violence. Just going to check something. Because I don't.
Some glass so far up your arm, huh?
Yeah. 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 Not only is the glass smashed, but you follow Desiree's gaze and you see there's a hairline crack in the wooden bar counter. And as Gil leans back, folding his arms, the bar lets out a loud creak as the crack grows wider and wider. Until with a loud crash, the entire section of counter that Gil was leaning against seems to sag and sink into the floor.
Wisteria is going to frantically snag wine glasses before they can spill onto the Baron and just shoot the Gil, a sister gaze to the one she had when she was standing over him with like gasoline on a lighter. It's like bailing a ship, just frantically trying to save the alcohol.
The prince stares down at Gil, frowning.
Baron.
Yeah, the Baron stares. Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes I think he's a bit mistaken, and so am I. But the Baron.
For a second there. Let's go.
Yeah, the Baron peers down at where Gil sits in front of the huge crack, the sagging section of bar. Luckily, most of the mortals that looked up upon hearing that sound of warping wood go back to what they were doing at one single glance from the Baron. The Baron frowns, revealing gritted teeth. And he says, "What is it, Gil? Do you not trust that your Baron has your best interests at heart? Do you resent, perhaps, having dispatched your own sire all those years ago that you are being pressed into service to help your own coterie find theirs?"
Hell nah. We took down Kezia. I'm going to get these guys their desserts as well. What I fucking don't appreciate is the standover here. We're doing the work. you give us the goods, you know? How do you want this guy left? Ash? Torpor? You want me to drink him dry? What want us to drink him dry?
The Baron at this raises an eyebrow and he says, if that's what it's going to be like, then the state of Mr. O means nothing to me. I would have preferred that he was brought back to his old master so that I could deal with him as I wish, but all that I really care about is that he divulges information where Thaddeus or any of the other sires can be found. After that, you may do with him as you wish, and well, while I was going to offer you all a boon for being so ready to assist the cause, I think it perhaps necessary in this situation for me to, as the cams say, pull rank. Work with Desiree to find Mr. O, extract the information, do with him as you wish, and you will consider it lucky that I am allowing you to even take an active role in the pursuit of your sires.
Okay, no. I know Barry's under the effect, but is it too late to retroactively spend a willpower to reroll some dice?
You can go ahead. However, you're not under the effect anymore. I will point out, Barry, that
Okay.
Gil's violence, broke everyone out of it. That big, a spectacle like that huge cacophonous crashing sound, that's enough to jerk anyone out of the Baron's spell.
Cool, yeah. Because if he's saying stuff about preventing us from searching for our sires, I'm staring daggers into that man's eyes.
Do not worry, the prince says, his voice now light as he stares into your eyes. If you do as you are told, you will find your sire, and you will be allowed to enact justice. I just figure if me asking a small favor is going to cause the type of protest where I must now spend a significant amount of money to repair my bar, if it's going to inspire that sort of petulant childishness, then maybe I need to hold what really matters above your heads.
Well,
Please
Baron
do excuse him. He's obviously a bit hungry today. I fear matters have gone to his head. You know how it is. Allow me to defray the cost a little. Just send me the bill for the bar, will you?
And Baron, with all due respect, we're anarchs. We have our own free will, and we have the intelligence to be able to make our own decisions. And you need to respect that a little bit.
Of course, says the Baron, as Wisteria slides a check across the sagging counter. He picks it up, folds it, slides it into his pocket, and says, Let's focus on the task at hand, shall we? And all forgiven. We're all equals here, all of us friends, and I do understand that sometimes the beast gets the better of us. He flashes a smile and a wink in Gil's direction.
Gil straightens himself up and kind of dusts off his hands. All right, we're good.
We're good, says the prince. So, finding Mr. O. He looks over at Desiree and gestures for her to speak. She clears her throat nervously, brushes some dandruff off her shoulders, and then says, yes, finding Mr. O. We know he's out there, but we don't know where exactly, and while I'm sure each of you has the resources that would allow you to eventually find him, the Baron seems to believe that time is of the essence. Rather than spending nights, weeks, tapping contacts and scrounging up every bit of information you can, I have the means of finding out where he is tonight. A little-known blood sorcery ritual, she says, smiling, that is well within my skill to conduct. And with one of Mr. O's belongings, graciously provided by Baron Wild, she reaches into the folds of her jacket and extracts solid white handkerchief. The edges have discolored with age. With this, and some good old-fashioned blood sorcery, at the right spot on the right ley line, we should have ourselves a homing beacon of sorts that will lead you directly to him. But I'll need help, she says, raising a finger. It's just some procurement, she says. I'd be ever so grateful. Procurement. A word which among the vampires of Buckley means to hunt, but not feed. Kidnapping. The procurement of vessels, of kine, with specific qualities of the blood. I need 4, she says. 1 for each blood resonance. For you see, the spell will only work with such an old object, this handkerchief having not belonged to Mr. O in decades, without a significant amount of power behind it. And the way we maximize that power is by making use of as many dyscrasias and blood resonances as we can. So I shall need 1 vessel with choleric blood, 1 with melancholy, 1 with phlegmatic, and 1 with sanguine, she says, rattling them off, counting them with her fingers. And I will need them brought to the ritual site. I'm sure you can handle that. Any questions? She smiles nervously, fidgeting behind the bar.
The ritual site would be where, precisely?
On the lake, or on the shore of the Barnong wetlands, of course. Overlook Point, to be exact, to the south of Platypus Creek, out in the boonies, far away from the lights of the city. There, on the edge of nature, there should be enough natural magic gathered up, and, of course, the lakes themselves, lying on the nexus of several ley lines. If we conduct it there, it should tell us what we need to know.
And I assume you'll need them within the next few hours, yes?
Indeed. There would be no point to conducting the ritual if it was not done tonight. You could likely find Mr. Rowe under your own power in that time. She looks up at an ornate clock on the bar wall. It's about to strike 11 p.m. The ley lines are at their most powerful at witching hour, which means that I would say you have about 4 hours, give or take, to procure the vessels and have them brought to me.
Does anyone have experience with the various humors? She looks around at the rest of her coterie. It's all Greek to me. She smiles.
Would this be a roll, or would this be something like we could have like basic knowledge of, sort of thing?
Say you have basic knowledge of the fact that there are resonances, because you've noticed as you've fed over the years that the blood tastes different with each vessel. Sometimes the blood makes you feel a certain way or bolsters your ability to do certain things. But I would say the only one here who knows of the 4 resonances and exactly what they do would be Barry, who I believe has the Bloodhound merit.
I can
And
track
that-
that pretty easily.
Pretty easily? Alright. I suppose you're in charge of this. Will we be staying together or splitting up?
Well, if we're looking
I
for
also
sending,
have the bloodhound.
Bloodhound. Yeah.
Ah,
So Avelina also raises her hand. Interesting, says Desiree. Interesting that one of your blood should have knowledge of the humors. Blood magic, of course, being something that your clan in particular love to engage in.
Indeed.
Barry,
No,
at
we
this,
do need information from every source possible.
Well spoken. And then she turns her attention to Barry.
Barry at this, Barry at this is gonna use his heightened senses again, but this time he's gonna use sight, and he's gonna try and do a sort of Sherlock deduction on Avelina to sort of get what her whole deal is.
Go ahead. Make me
Dracula
a wit.
cosplayer.
Yeah. Go ahead, make me a wit, insight plus specs, please, Barry.
Okay.
Question: will
Yep.
unwaverable mind come into play with this at all?
Well, he's not trying to read your mind. He's just like trying to study you. You know, what you look like, what you're wearing, the way you hold yourself, to try to get a sense of what type of person you are. However, you could try to obfuscate this if you like. If you'd like to meet his role with a role of your own, charisma plus performance.
Sure.
Yeah, he's doing the whole Sherlock Holmes slight crook to her fingers, chin set a certain way, heels set like a ballerina. Obviously, they were in Madagascar in '84.
Go ahead.
Yeah. How many successes did you... Oh, well, we'll get her to do hers first. Go ahead. Avelina, make me a charisma. 2 successes.
Yeah.
And Barry, 2's what you got to beat.
Sorry, that's 4 successes.
4 successes. You know how to read people, Barry. You were a cop for many, many years. And it's obvious to you that Avelina's trying to project herself a certain way. You get the impression she's trying to project herself as being, you know, a sort of whimsical, fun-loving, flirtatious girl. But as you watch her adjust her dress, shift in her seat, adjust her hair, you peer beyond that and get a glimpse of the true Avelina. The way she held up her hand, the way she announced that she was familiar with the humors, you realize that the way even now she's unconsciously sniffing the air, sniffing the kine in this little bar, that she's a bloodhound like you. And furthermore, when you see the jewelry she wears, all of the necklaces and bracelets and talismans that don't seem to go well together, that all seem to clash, very obviously having been taken from many different hosts, you get the impression that she likes to do things her way, that she likes to take trophies, and that she is very thorough at what she does. Would you say that's accurate, Avelina?
Yeah, pretty much. Don't forget the knife that's in her pocket still.
Yes. And of course you see the hilt of a switchblade, a particularly old one, just sitting in the folds of her dress, and it's fairly obvious to you immediately, Barry, that knife does not belong to her. It doesn't match her outfit in any way. And it doesn't even look like it's been used in quite some time. She's just like woven a chain through a hole in the handle. and seems to wear it as a trophy, if nothing else.
It works as my belt. When I need one.
If belt.
Barry's just going to silently clock that.
I will say, Barry, with your 4 successes, even though you're studying Evelina, you do notice Desiree hovering nervously behind the counter, leaning forwards with bated breath as if waiting to hear you all say yes, that you're ready to do the job. And then you remember only a few moments ago when she was in the room behind the bar with the prince and he was telling her, now's not the time for your experiment. This
Yeah, I
is
was just
more
about to
important.
I'll say, so is this, or is this not the experiment?
At this, immediately she raises an eyebrow, her mouth falls open in a surprised "oh," but only for a second. Only for that split second it takes for a vampire such as her to compose herself. Behind her, the Baron stares onwards with a look of barely concealed amusement and curiosity on his face. "Oh, just as I thought," he says. "Desiree, you should know better than to speak about your personal business in the presence of Barry Marwood. The man, of course, never misses a trick." "Well, go on," he says. And she swallows. And she says, "The experiment. Right. I'm not sure what you heard, but I've been working on something for quite a while, and, well, the blood you procure tonight would be assisting with that as well as the ritual
see.
to find Mr. O."
Wisteria shoots Barry a grateful look, touches his hand gently, and says, so essentially we're helping you out a bit beyond what's expected then. Just a little bit.
"Blood was going to have to be procured for the ritual anyway," she says, and I just thought, at this, the Baron holds out his hand and he winks at her and says, dear, the cat is out of the bag."
Oh, I didn't say we wouldn't do it. I just think, well, you could do us a little favor in the future. Mind a boon for the coterie?
"What say you, Desiree?" says the prince. "After all, if we inform the coterie that they do not need to collect all 4 types of blood resonance tonight, but in fact that only 2 would suffice..." At this, Desiree flashes him a look of frustration, of anger. She sighs and sinks forwards over the counter and she says, yes, 2 different resonances would be enough to get the ritual to work.
Alright.
But
But
I
if we
was
get-
hoping with all 4 I could make some headway on my experiment in the same token.
We're not opposed to that. We'll do our best, and if we get you 4, well, why don't you owe us a little minor boon? Or why don't you explain? And you could tell us about the experiment. I'm sure we'd love to hear.
She sighs and nods, and she says, "Well, I've been working on a new thaumaturgy ritual which I believe can create vitae, vampire blood, that if I have the right blood resonances in the right place at the right time with the right ritual, that I can impart the qualities of vitae, immortal blood. The results would be invaluable," she says. And now that the cat's out of the bag, she discards all pretense of this being a secret, and her voice picks up. She speaks faster, excitedly, as she tells you the salient points. "Think of all the elders who could feed without fear of a blood bond. How handsomely they would pay for knowledge of such a rite. Not only that, but There are members of my own clan, the Tremere, and other clans that use blood sorcery, such as the Banu Hakim, that would want to learn it as well. It would give us Anarchs leverage over the Cam for sure. I'll spare you the precise details, she says. Not that you'd understand anyway, but the ritual is about balance in all things, and its focus is the blood and its resonance. And so I need 4 mortals, each with a different resonance in their blood to complete it. I don't need a lot of their blood, she says. I don't need them dead, I don't need them drained, but they must be present when it's shed, you see. They must be physically there to shed their blood on the thaumaturgic circle, and, well...
Of course, certainly. And we'll be happy to do that. 1 minor boon. And the proceeds from the potential proceeds, the long-term proceeds, will far outweigh this small favor. You know this as well as I do. She offers a hand.
She glances at the Baron. The Baron shrugs, and he says, I never promised that I would be the one to help you with it. And besides, you have Gil Burke here. He gestures towards Gil, and I understand he's very good at procurement. Is that so? Says Desiree. She holds out her hand to you, Gil.
Yeah.
Well, I would of course be happy to provide a minor boon in return for your services. Unless your price is different? Unless there's something else you would require from me?
You look at Wisteria, and then back to Desiree. Minor boon sounds pretty good, thanks.
Minor boon it is, then. She smiles. Well, see, Baron, I told you that this would be the perfect time to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
All right.
Yes, he says. And then he claps his hands together. Well, you have your marching orders, so to speak. Not that I would ever give you orders. We're all in this for the sake of the cause. But I do impress upon you the limited time you have, so I would advise you get to work now. He winks. And then he turns. And without giving you a chance to ask any more questions, he beckons for Desiree to follow him back through the dark, back over the threshold into the dark room behind the bar. Robert, you were going to say something?
No, he had like 1 more question for her, but it's like, she's gone now. She's like, oh, god damn it.
She stops in the threshold, hearing Robert grumble. She looks over her shoulder. Yes?
How do we know the what the resonances are? How do we know what causes them?
My, she says, rolling her eyes. 30 years dead, and you don't know that? Well, I suppose not everyone understands the fundamentals. She clears her throat. The resonance in a mortal's blood depends on the emotion most prominent in their hearts at the time. She lists off the range of emotions, and you memorize them. For choleric, that is the humor of passion and anger, but also one of jealousy and violence. Melancholy is the humor of sadness and the downtrodden, but also those who seek enlightenment. Phlegmatic is the humor of those who are calm and relaxed, or those who are lost in reminiscence or sentiment. And sanguine is, well, at this she glances over at Evelina and says, it means they're horny.
I can work with that one.
And there, says Desiree. I will conduct my preparations, and when you have the required vessels, I'll be waiting for you at Overlook Point. I have a few more things to discuss with the Baron, but then I'll be straight on my way there. And best of luck, she says, smiling broadly, as she steps over the threshold and is swallowed by the darkness.
The second she's gone, Wisteria turns around. All right, 2 teams. Barry's in charge of 1. Evelina, you've got the other. We'll have to do 2 and 3. Rob and I should be on separate teams due to our overlapping skill sets and proficiencies. Beyond that, it's up to you guys who you want and where. She says to Barry and Evelyn. Also, I've arranged for rental cars since we don't want to use our own vehicles to transport kidnapped people.
With the
Anyone
dots
else
you
got
have in
anything to add?
resources, you can do that without rolling.
She holds up her phone to show like the messages she's been sending while the Tremere's been explaining things.
I'll be happy
Anyone got
to
it?
flirt with some people if that's what we need.
Well, that'll procure 1 type of blood.
And if we're lucky, we may be able to procure the melancholy one. That was the sadness or fear one, wasn't it?
That one, Robert, you feel deep in your gut, you feel like that's one that you have very unique skills at acquiring.
Mm-hmm.
You're not able to smell it in their blood, but you're certain you could scare someone enough that there'd be no way they would not be melancholy.
Yeah. As he's saying that, he pulls his phone out to see if there's any like pings from his security system to see if anyone's like lurking around.
Robert.
Gil?
Oh, go ahead. Keep.
Angry was another one, wasn't it? Gil, I think that's your wheelhouse.
I mean, I'm good at it, but you want to find someone pissed off? You want to piss someone off? I'm gold at that.
Yes, you are. What's the last one again?
So that's choleric and phlegmatic handled. Evelina thinks you can handle the sanguine, and so that leaves phlegmatic. The humour of those who are calm and relaxed, but also the humour of those who are lost in reminiscing or sentiment.
Barry, I believe, for reasons I won't go into, that could be an easy one for you to track down.
Hang on. We need someone horny, right? Or just wants to fuck, right? Does it matter if they're a ghoul?
They're mortal.
Oh.
I can.
Yes, you're.
You want to rile up Abby? Like, it'll take me fucking seconds, man. She's easy.
All right, man. Why don't you go take care of that and have her meet us? Yes. We don't need particulars, and you can take care of that. Yes.
Meanwhile, Robert, I'd like you to roll 3 dice for me. 2 for your Haven rating and 1 for your security system.
I'm assuming these would be non-hunger too, yeah?
These are non-hunger.
Yeah. Oh, that's almost the best I could have done. 3 successes.
3 successes. You peer down at your phone, open the app, and sure enough, there are 3 pings. 3 people, a group of urban explorers, and they seem to have made entry to your haven almost exactly 2 hours ago, just before darkness fully set in. There's nothing in the app that says they ever came out. For all intents and purposes, you're pretty sure they're still there, still exploring the tunnels, the mine shafts, the collapsing saloons, and miners' office and mining supply stores.
Alright, with Gil taking care of sanguine, we will need one for choleric.
Choleric. The humour of passion and anger.
I can still piss someone off. Like,
that's true. I mean, you can work on Abby on the ride down, not in the car I'm in, please. And, I should take care of her. Alright, cool. Yes. Alright, so, with Robert, do you need any help collaring the melancholics? Or do you think you've got this?
We only need the one, so We should be good
I'll
with
leave
that.
one. All right.
Unless you want to use the other two for the other ones.
No, I mean, we don't need all of the sames. All right, so that leaves with you taking care of that. Gil will work with one of the team leaders on a choleric, and I'll work with the other team leader on the melancholic. Not melancholic, what? Phlegmatic? Phlegmatic, yes.
Well,
Oh,
that
good to me.
leaves only one question then. With Barry on one team, Barry the leader of one team, and Evelina the leader of the other, which team are Robert, Gil, and Wisteria on?
Well, Robert's going to have to go grab his own, isn't he?
But knowing that there's three of
okay.
them, and, maybe he might like to bring backup.
True.
I can go with you, Robert.
All right.
Which leaves Gil and Wisteria and Evelina to the other group. Gil and Robert. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah, just before, I'd like to sort of exit the bar and circle, like, where they went to the back, just sort of, sorry, the Baron and Desiree, and just sort of listen into their conversation. Heightened senses stuff.
Heightened senses. You lean forwards, try to listen, but this time they're well aware that you can eavesdrop. They've moved further into the back room. In fact, they seem to be in an entirely different room You peer through the doorway, and you can see a hallway behind a couple of shelves and cardboard boxes, and there seems to be a little manager's office back there where they've taken shelter for the time being. You'd have to get closer if you have any hope of overhearing them, but with a ghoul at the bar and an entire bar of mortals, it might be hard to do without obfuscating yourself.
Should have been taken. Now I'm really missing Silence of Death. Okay.
You could try to do it without obfuscating.
It's not going to be good. Is there a way it kind of... Would you allow me, like, to soup up heightened senses and maybe rouse the blood for it or something?
Yes, I will allow you to rouse the blood, see if you get hungrier, and adds, with your blood potency, 3 extra dice to the pool. And then you can make a wits awareness or specs as usual.
Okay, so I don't get hungrier, which is insane. So 3 extra dice on top of wits awareness. Okay, hold on. Okay, so this is this is 12 dice.
12 dice. That's a lot.
Okay. We've got a 6 from a critical.
You're vaguely aware of Robert calling for you. You look over your shoulder, you see Robert already standing in the entrance door of the bar, about to step out into the night. But your attention is focused on that hallway and on that office door. You call upon the blood. You hear the beast whisper in the back of your mind. They can't hide anything from us.
No, they can't.
And then, at first, you hear mumbling, incoherent babbling, the hum of voices obscured behind a door, and then they get clearer and clearer, and then you hear Desiree. You don't hear everything they're saying, but you hear snippets of the conversation, a word here and there. Desiree's worried. Someone's after her, and Well, there's a good chance they'll notice a disturbance in the ley lines, and that's why I'm sending them with you, says the Baron. They've proven they can handle anything the cam throws at them. Still, says Desiree, I don't know. The cam doesn't usually have the ability to detect rituals such as this, and if I'm right, and what I think is happening, then it's not just the cam, it's... Please, don't speak of it here, says the Baron. There's better time, better place. For now, just focus on the ritual. And the coterie will do their best to protect you, if it comes to that. You hear the sound of chairs scraping on concrete, and then you dull your senses as the conversation ends, as the office door opens and the Baron steps out, Desiree arm in arm with him, and they begin to return to the bar.
I'll just look at Baron knowingly and then leave.
Following Robert out into the very windy, cold, chilling night air. So, Robert, first stop, Prospector's Peak. It's a fair distance. The new order's in the CBD. Prospector's Peak is down on the edge of South Buckley. You're looking at about a half-hour drive. Are you fine with that? Knowing that there's limited time, that you're only going to have a couple hours to procure these vessels, is there anything you would like to do before you head out that way?
I guess unless we want to try and pick up one of the other residences first or something, or...
What about you, Barry? You're the one driving. Robert, of course, doesn't have a car.
Rentals.
Oh, yes, rentals, yeah. And as you step out of the bar, there's already two cars. The two cars are already parked there on the curb. Two large family-sized station wagons. A blue one and a green one. The number plate's generic. No identifying marks. The sticker for the rental agency has been peeled off the back window, leaving a faint mark of a square. So, Barry, is there anything you feel like you'd like to do on the way before you commit? Are you prepared to commit to this journey down to Robert's Haven, knowing how far away it is? Being one of the team leaders, after all.
I think I might. I wonder if maybe a premonition might help at this moment.
As you climb, which station wagon do you pick? The green one or the blue one?
I'm in my car.
You're going to use your car. Yep.
Robert, you're welcome to join, but if you want to make sure you've got your own means of.
Someone's going to need to transport them. So, Robert, green wagon or blue one? And might I add, this is probably the most luxurious vehicle you've ever sat in your life. Perfectly upholstered, real leather seats. And you know, the car is actually modern. It's not just some old bomb from like 30 years ago, which was what you're probably used to driving.
Yeah, probably got blue.
Robert slides into the driver's seat of the blue station wagon. As you hunch over the wheel, Several hundred ants scurry from under the sleeves of your coat and begin fanning out throughout the car, searching for any valuables or morsels of food for the hive. And then, behind you, Barry, you see the lights of the station wagon turn on and the engine roar to life. And as it pulls out into the road and begins to drive through the suburb, through the CBD.
I apologize, I'll be right back, guys.
Sure. You hunch over your own steering wheel, and before you turn the key in the ignition, probe what could be, what may be. Go ahead, make a rouse check for me.
Okay, I'm not getting hungrier. I stay fed.
Still at hunger 1 for now. Very good. So go ahead for me. And please roll Resolve plus Auspex.
Three successes.
3 successes. You seem to be an autopilot. You feel your foot on the pedal. You feel the car lurching as the engine roars to life. You feel your hands turning the wheel, negotiating the corners, staying a car length behind Robert's station wagon at all times as he leads you south through the CBD under the shadow of the skyscrapers and through the haze of neon lights. But your mind is somewhere else, Barry. Your mind is in a dark, cramped cave, a mine shaft, a tunnel. The walls, thankfully, are not yet moving. You're still not far enough in the tunnels where the hive resides, but you feel an unwavering sense of certainty that you are indeed viewing Robert's Haven, the tunnels that crisscross underneath Prospector's Peak. And you see 3 people trudging quietly through the tunnels, looking from left to right, stopping each time they hear a rock fall, each time they hear noises from somewhere in the darkness. They stop and cautiously check their surroundings. 2 of them have their phones raised in front of them, flashlights on, crisscrossing the walls, recording everything they see. The 3rd doesn't hold a phone at all, but a farmer's sawn-off shotgun. He holds it cocked and raised in front of him. "Getting it all? Getting everything?" he says to one of the people near him. The young guy nods. And then the man with the shotgun takes a step forwards and says, Good. Because that thing's down here. I know it's down here. And we're going to catch it. And we're going to film every minute of it. And we're going to be so fucking famous. Whoosh. You're back in the here and now, Barry. Dropped back into the driver's seat. As the last of the downtown high-rises pass you by, and the inner city is replaced, slowly but surely, with the industrial wasteland of the outer suburbs.
I'm just gonna text Robert. Must she knock your phone? They're armed and they're looking for you. Be wary.
Because, Robert, I believe you have the creepy perk on your Haven.
Yep.
Which means, and this usually works out to your benefit, Prospector's Peak, the old abandoned amusement park, and the surrounding little frontier miners village has a certain air to it. It's central to several whispered stories, local folk tales, all of which concern creepy crawlies and monsters of the night. And because it has that reputation, sometimes you get people like this, cryptid hunters, not just urban explorers, but those who want to catch the object of those tales and use it as their ticket to fame. So as you look down and read the message that Barry has sent to your phone, you can't help but feel your mandibles twisting into a smile, Robert, a cruel, anticipating smile. Those cryptid hunters have no idea what's in store for them. The two cars eventually pull up in the wide open parking lot in front of Prospector's Peak. Once upon a time, Prospector's Peak was the crown jewel of Buckley's admittedly minuscule tourism industry. Perfectly detailed replica of a colonial frontier town, complete with Main Street, saloon, and brothel, and several old mine shafts repurposed as the track for roller coasters and tours and ghost trains. But now in the 21st century, just like the rest of Buckley, it languishes. The buildings are sagging, broken, crumbling under their own weight. The entirety of Prospector's Peak is encased within a very thick set of chain link fences topped with barbed wire, faded signs reading "Condemned, stay away." And yet, Robert, as you know, people always come. So, Robert, as you lead Barry through the car park, through the wide open gates, under the faded Prospector's Peak sign, what is the first thing you do? What is your routine when you're checking on your traps?
Probably checking whatever the most recent pings are to try and get an idea of where they are in the park. Trying to figure out which tunnel, which old building or wherever they are.
Barry watches as you make your way into the old saloon. You step past the bar, past the empty saloon itself, and into a small room at the back. Here, hidden away from the prying eyes of the tourists that would have visited, is the control room behind a thick metal door with faded lettering reading "Authorized personnel only." The door creaks open as Robert climbs into the rickety chair, and his gaze passes over a bank of computer monitors, each broadcasting a grainy black and white feed of the park and its surrounds. Go ahead, Robert, and make me an intelligence plus technology check. Or an intelligence plus larceny check, up to you.
I'll go intelligence tech. Is that 2 already?
My premonition is system.
Yeah, you can describe roughly what the tunnel you saw looked like. And if you do that, I'll add an extra dice to Robert's pool.
Yeah, I'll do that, definitely.
Okay. Oh, okay, that brings up to 5 successes.
5 successes.
Hey.
What to Barry appears to be nothing more than a featureless mine shaft is to you a very keen indicator of where to look. It only takes a few seconds. You flick through several feeds, tap on the keyboard, and sure enough, you find the three making their way down towards the central shaft of the Pan for Gold. An old roller coaster that makes its way deep down dips underneath the nearby creek. And there, the central shaft, deep underneath the river, is also coincidentally where you know your hive has established itself. So you seem to have two options. You could hunt them down where they currently are, or you could stalk them, follow them, wait for them to stumble into your hive, and prime the hive to wait for them. You know your hive are capable of capturing them, Robert, but they're hungry. And Desiree did say she needed the mortals alive and in one piece. There is a chance, if you'd like your hive to capture them for you, that they may not have the blood that she requires.
No, yeah, I think knowing where they are, he'll show Barry the way and have the two of them try and capture one of them.
Capture them before they make it to the hive.
Hmm.
Probably a wise idea. So, Barry, what's the play for you? Do you plan to follow Robert, follow his every move, or would you like to split up, see if you can get a feel for the tunnels yourself, see if maybe you can flank them?
I think, I'll discuss that with Robert. What do you think is best for me? How can I help?
Well, we think it's probably best to get one of them towards you, because you probably have the means of restraining one. Would it be, knowing the layout, would it be possible, would there be a way of basically Robert attempting to, herd them towards somewhere where Barry's waiting, but, hopefully getting them to split up on the way, so, maybe only, one or two of them actually end up where he is?
They're not that far from one of the main shafts that winds up to the surface. It's possible you think that you could have Barry wait in the entrance and herd at least one of them up that way. Once you get down there and you start putting your ants to work, you think it will be very easy to get them to split up.
Yeah. Basically, just for the sake of preface, just explains that, if you wait there, then I can split them up and herd one of them your way.
Alright. Do you want to...
Go ahead.
Do you, at some point, ever want to talk about what's happened to you?
What's happened to us? In what sense? Since our embrace, or?
Well, yeah, and a little bit more than a little bit after that. You've been changed. It's pretty clear to see.
For you, Robert, this just feels like the natural state of being.
We don't understand, but I suppose we can talk after this if you want.
Barry just clocks the use of we. Yeah, I like that. And Barry's just going to head up to the surface on Robert's orders.
As Robert descends into the darkness, I would like Barry Barry, are you just going to wait at the surface, or are you going to, like, hide somewhere, see if you can find a good vantage point and get the drop on them? Or are you happy for them to just come barreling straight into you? Are you confident you can take them that way?
I think I can take him that way.
Barry just stands there, hand on the hilt of his service pistol, standing in the mouth of the mine shaft, while Robert descends in down below, descending into the realm of creepy crawlies, into the place of thousands of little legs and gleaming eyes. So, your predator type is trapdoor.
Yes.
Which means that when you're hunting in your haven, you get to add your haven dots to the dice pool. So, will you be doing this obfuscated or unobfuscated?
Knowing that they're recording, especially now knowing that like they're filming, is going to obfuscate, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, rouse the blood to obfuscate.
And since our little time jump, Robert has acquired a new ability called Ghost in the Machine, which means his obfuscate applies to machinery as well, too.
Yeah, do you get hungrier?
He does, unfortunately.
Wow, good thing there's 3 down here. Now, obfuscated, fading away as if the darkness itself was a cloak around you. Make me a wits plus awareness plus haven dots. Total haven rank. So your base dots and any positive merits add to that pool to negotiate the warren and find your prey.
So that'd be base haven dots, and then would security system count as a positive plus?
Yes.
Oh, shit, yeah.
How do we go?
Just going to willpower because that was terrible despite how many dice I had. Oh, that's better. Brings it up to 4 successes.
Silently, you creep through the warren, negotiating the labyrinth of tunnels and mine shafts. Everywhere you move, your faithful subjects, your faithful friends that hide in the walls, in the crevasses, in the cracks, greet you. The surface of the stone seems to scurry and come alive as you move past. As an army of ants follows you quietly, slowly, silently. Eventually, you hear the voices. You see the 3 silhouettes up ahead. The beam of a flashlight moves over your face. On the screen of the phone, there's a momentary distortion, static, as your ghost in the machine disguises you. That all 3 of them are walking your way. They do not see you, and little do they know that the rock face behind them is moving, slowly lurching forwards, carried by trillions of little legs. Yeah, says the man with the shotgun. Look, according to that old map, we keep heading down this way, we'll head under the lake, and... Shh! One of the others hisses. Do you hear that? They sweep the beams of their phone flashlights around, and somehow do not notice the living carpet of ants that seems to have coalesced all around them. Nothing, it's just the place settling. Settling, says the man with his shotgun. You just stay close to me. We see anything moving down here, I'm gonna shoot, no matter what it is. And then the other two, the two with the phones, hang back ever so slightly as the man raises the shotgun and begins to creep forwards, unaware of millions of eyes watching him.
Yeah, just as he's stalking behind them, just watching, just wait for a moment and try and maybe throw a rock or something down, if there's a Y intersection or something, try and make some noise down one way to try and get them to go, some of them to go one way while sending the rest the other. Or trying to split them up so we can send one of them to Barry.
There's a very easy way of doing this, Robert. You're surrounded by the hive, and it would be very easy for them to dig a little piece of it, a little piece of the wall away, let a rock crumble down and crash somewhere distant enough. And so you chitter in the darkness. Tiny little pinpricks disappear into the black, and almost instantaneously, you hear the sound of a heavy rock dropping and falling and rolling, coming from down a distant shaft, from the shaft that leads up to the surface. The fuck was that? All three men shout in unison. The man with the shotgun whirls around as the phone flashlights peer down the long shaft, down into the darkness. You catch sight of a couple of rat-sized ants scurrying away into the crevices and the shadows, quick enough, or perhaps obfuscated enough, that the mortals don't see them. "Something up that way," hisses one of the men. The young one with the phone. "Up there." "Yeah, I'm on my way then," says the bloke with the shotgun, raising the shotgun and cautiously making his way to the branch in the shaft. "All right, I'll head up. You two continue on. Film everything you can." You sure?" says one of the others. "Yeah, I'm sure." He points to a camera taped to the bottom of the shotgun. "If it's down there, I'll catch it. The rest of you, see if you can handle escapes, places where it could come from, tracks, droppings, anything like that." "Got it," say the other two as they begin to fan out. Two of them now heading your direction towards you, Robert. The other one, the man with the shotgun, trudging up towards the surface where Barry awaits.
Right, I'm going to use a bloodhound.
Bloodhound.
Have a sniff.
You sniff the air. And then, after a few minutes of nothing, you detect it, Barry. Somewhere beyond the mouth of the cave. Fresh blood on the air. You smell it before you hear his footsteps. You smell it before you see his silhouette. You smell it before you hear him muttering, or hear the sound of him cocking the shotgun and clutching it close to his chest. He's not scared. He's not melancholy. He's not scared. But he's very, very, very much still melancholy, Barry. You can smell it. You can almost feel his shotgun in your hand, trembling with excitement as he draws nearer and nearer to what he believes to be his ticket to fame. He's seeking enlightenment, and he's about to find it. And then you see him, Barry. You see him round the corner, a look of curious determination on his face as he whips around and points the shotgun at you. His mouth drops open, speechless, as he sees what he believes to be another human being standing there. Then he sees the long trench coat, the badge pinned to your torso, shining in the moonlight. Fuck! He whispers. Fuck! Look, I'll be honest with you, officer. We didn't think anyone would turn up tonight, is all.
Barry sort of glances at Robert and then glances back at this guy and just says, "You'll do," and pounces on him.
Ooh, nice. Go ahead, Barry. Make me a strength brawl check.
Yay. Oh shit. Okay. 7 with a critical.
Ooh, very nice.
Cool.
7 to his 4 successes. He never lowered the shotgun. He was perhaps about to, but then you spoke the words, "You'll do." You stepped forwards, and before he knew what was happening, you were moving as a blur of frenzied the blur of a frenzied, hungry monster. You hear him scream as bang! The shotgun goes off. Somewhere just behind your head, the buckshot sends a cloud of dust and rock firing. You feel the wall of the shaft vibrate behind you. You hear him cock the shotgun, pump it, and scream again as he raises the gun to fire, this time almost jabbing it into your torso, but he's too late. You grab him, hoist him against the wall, and he gasps as you rip the shotgun out of his hand and toss it to the ground. He grits his teeth in defiance, staring into your eyes, and he says one thing. "You're no cop. You're not even human."
And then I'm just going to bash his head into the wall and knock him out.
Clunk! He falls limp in your hands. You sling him over your shoulder and carry him out into the cold night air. One down. Robert, the 2 urban explorers are creeping towards you. Their cameras raise, the beams of light sweeping, crisscrossing the cavern. The beams of light pass you several times, but they never notice you. Indeed, never seem to notice the fact that the rock around them is squirming, moving, alive. You can feel the anticipation, the excitement of your hive. You can hear their voices as they ask, "These ones?"
There's not so much a verbal either physically verbal or mental verbal command as he approaches, and just whichever one of the two is the one that's a bit behind, just comes up behind them, hand on the mouth, and the fangs go in. Which is sort of the thing of just the unspoken thing of, yeah, they can have the other one.
His friend screams as your hand comes out of nowhere, grabs him by the shoulder and pulls him backwards. He opens his mouth to scream himself, but hundreds of ants flood from under your sleeve into the open cavity, blocking his voice, blocking his breath. He gaggles and gasps as you pull him around a corner, and your fangs pierce his skin, and the blood, the melancholic blood, the blood that is alive, vibrating with fear, slides down your throat. Thousands of contented voices purr in unison with your beast, as his melancholy resonance empowers your obfuscate, giving an extra dot to all obfuscate rolls you make, Until the next time you feed. Hundreds of ants swarm over his body, pinning him to the ground, stopping him from struggling as you lean in and feed at your leisure, like a spider. And how much do you take?
Just enough to get me down to 1.
Just enough to get you down to 1. You wrench your fangs away and stand, and as soon as you step away from him, the living carpet swarms over his body. He opens his mouth, tries to scream, but can't, as they drag him away, as the ants carry him into the darkness to join his friend, and neither will ever be seen again. And that's where we'll leave tonight's session, I think. As the amusement park claims another. What are your convictions, Robert?
Convictions. One is all information has a cost, which I don't think applies here, but the other one is insignificant in the face of many.
You didn't kill these men, Robert. This isn't like that night 30 years ago. This isn't like when you drained your own co-worker in your hands, when you peered down, felt his lifeless husk in your arms. These ones were given to the hive for the good of the hive. They stepped in here of their own free will, and who are you to tell the hive to reject fresh blood, fresh sustenance, when it so willingly presents itself? No stain. And one of the vessels down. 3 remain. Next time on Creatures Such as We. Creatures Such as We is a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition actual play podcast presented by DM Fiat. Creatures Such as We is based on a sourcebook by Brian Holland, available at the Storyteller's Vault. Vampire the Masquerade rules are developed by Onyx Path Publishing and Paradox Interactive and published by Renegade Studios. Portions of the materials are the copyrights and trademarks of Paradox Interactive AB and are used with permission. All rights are reserved. For more information, please visit worldofdarkness.com. The music used in this podcast is composed by Kevin MacLeod, Whitebat Audio, and Ivan Duke, and is used with permission.